Hello, and welcome back to Hours In, an exploratory dive into free games, demos, and more. The eagle-eyed among you will have noticed that in addition to the focus of our last episode, Arcade Paradise, there is in fact another free game on the Epic Store this week. This week being July 18th through 24th, 2024. Information on the game's typical retail price can be found in the description of this video. Spoiler alert, this particular game definitely needs a bit more exploration than the 2 hours that I've put in so far. So this video will just be a sort of quick overview and a basic explanation of some of the gameplay mechanics. Maid of Sker, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is a first-person survival horror game, both developed and published by Wales Interactive. Appropriate because the game takes some influence from Welsh folklore and shares its name with a 3-volume novel from 1872 written by R.D. Blackmore. We play as a man called Thomas Evans. We've been beckoned to the mysterious Sker Island by a letter from our lover, Elizabeth Williams. From the letter, we gather that she is somehow trapped within her family's hotel on the island, called the Sker Hotel. Once we get there, we quickly realize that something is very wrong here. Everything seems to be run down, there's blood everywhere, and the power is inconsistent with flickering lights off and on. It's kind of reminiscent of roaming the desolate halls of BioShock's Rapture, where you can see how at one point in time this place would have been so grand, lavish, beautiful, and other descriptive words. It sort of forces you to start thinking about what might have happened here. After we wander for a little while, we get a phone call from our beloved. She tells us that her family and the staff have been, quote, beguiled by the darkness that inhabits this place, and cues us in to one of the core mechanics of this game by going on to explain that they attack anybody who makes a sound. In addition to this, she also tells us that she believes that by collecting, then playing 4 brass cylinders on the harmonium, things will return to normal. Now, we begin the classic survival horror quest of collecting a number of something. Whether it's the 8 pages of Slender, the ritualistic MacGuffins of Devour, or in this case, the brass cylinders. And it's while on the hunt for these cylinders that we have our first encounter with the quiet ones. This is where the game's sound-based mechanics come into play. Earlier on, you might have noticed that you can make Thomas hold his breath by holding the left mouse button down. Obviously, we can only do this for a limited amount of time, since people do need to breathe. But why do we ever want to do this? There's a few reasons. Breathing makes a little bit of noise, and coughing makes a lot of noise. And the amount of noise we produce is critical here, since the quiet ones seem to be extremely sound-based. They might not be able to see you very well, at least I assume not, since they've got a Slipknot bandmate sort of head covering on, but they have bionic ears. When you see or hear these guys, you really need to watch your SPLs. And that means moving slowly, holding your breath if they're really close, or if you're near any sort of smoke, dust, purple gas, whatever. You can also use their acute sense of sound against them in a few different ways. There's certain environmental sound sources that, if used correctly, can corral the beasts to where you want them to be, or at least distract them so you can slip by unnoticed. For example, in the hotel, right behind the reception desk, there is a map with a sort of call system. From here, you can ring different phones around the building to shuffle the enemies around, sort of like moving Springtrap around using the audio lure in the third Five Nights at Freddy's. In addition to this, after a little bit of playtime, we find the phonic modulator, which is essentially an enemy stun button. Be careful though, there's some things to consider. Ammo is not unlimited. You need to find cartridges to make the modulator work. The other thing to think about is where the enemies are when you stun them. You may end up having to use a second shot if their positioning is bad. While we're on the subject of pickups, items, mechanics, let me just put a few things out here. You can find healing items in the form of these nervous tonics. Press Q at any time to use them. Healing also has a secondary benefit in this game, or should I say, not healing has a secondary downside. The more hurt Thomas is, the more noise he makes. Because when he's hurt, he goes like, and the enemies can pick up on that. However, the scarcity of healing pickups, or at least what I've seen so far, means that you'll have to think carefully about when you use them. Next, you can save the game at the phonographs. The first time you hit one, you get a little bit of lore, like the tapes in BioShock. But don't worry if you accidentally skip it. You can listen again whenever you want from your journal, J on PC. Finally, you can access a map by hitting M. But you need to find pieces of the map in each area to actually populate it. Your current objective can also be found here if you happen to miss it. Overall, I like what I've seen of this game so far. I did have a couple of issues with it, but truth be told, I think those issues can be summarized in 2 words. Skill issue. I got lost in the graveyard for a little bit, just wandering around in circles, sort of wondering what to do. But then I sort of caught on to the fact that the game kind of like soft guides you by having light sources along your basic path or blood stains pointing the way you need to go, that kind of thing. I also still don't understand the map. But I don't think that's the game's fault. I think I just need more time in it. If you like Resident Evil, My Friendly Neighborhood, or maybe the Slender-like games, you should enjoy Maid of Sker. Great atmosphere and setting, interesting premise, and the sound-based stuff is done pretty well. Maybe my opinion might change after a few more hours in, but I don't think so. For a price of $0 on the Epic Game Store right now, it's a no-brainer. Thanks again for watching. And be on the lookout for part 2 of Arcade Paradise, and perhaps the second part of Maid of Sker. Remember to grab those free games every week, even if you might not be able to play them right away. Just put them in your cart, check out, and then they're on your account, so you have them, you know. You've been watching Hours In.